Here's the bitter truth about relationships. The thing is, you can't mold a person into what you want them to be. The harder you try, the faster they slip away. Pressure doesn't create closeness, it creates distance. And nowhere is this more obvious than in relationships where one partner has an avoidant personality style. Ever felt like you're talking to a wall in your relationship? Trying to convince an avoidant partner, constantly reassuring them or expecting direct healing from them is like trying to force open a locked door. Psychological research shows that this temperament never softens under direct pressure. In fact, the harder you push, the greater the distance grows. This is not mere stubbornness, but rather a natural defense mechanism that activates whenever they feel their freedom or emotional space is being invaded. Here's the paradox that changes everything. As Carl Rogers once said, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. The same thing applies to relationships. When you stop insisting on changing your avoidant partner and accept them as they are, only then does the possibility of healing quietly emerge. So what actually works? If you truly want to help an avoidant partner heal, instead of focusing on changing them, it is far more fruitful to concentrate on mature aspects that can genuinely strengthen and sustain the relationship. Directly changing an avoidant personality is almost impossible, but the relationship becomes more secure and understanding when you demonstrate maturity in your own behavior. This maturity involves respecting boundaries, maintaining emotional independence, and preserving their freedom while keeping the bond safe. Here's the shift that makes all the difference. This perspective not only saves you from exhaustion and repeated failure, but according to research-based understanding, is also far more constructive. Psychologists agree that the path to healing or growth with avoidant partners does not open through pressure or persuasion, but through an environment that offers space and inspiration without demands. This is the very strategy that not only frees the relationship from unrealistic expectations, but also leads both partners toward healthier, more balanced dynamics. Now let's take a closer look at these aspects and see how they can truly strengthen a relationship. Respecting boundaries without fear. Have you ever noticed that the harder you chase someone, the faster they run? This isn't just a casual observation, it's a deep psychological truth, especially in relationships where one partner has avoidant tendencies. When you push for closeness with an avoidant partner, you're not just asking for love, you're triggering their survival system. Their nervous system interprets pressure as a threat, and the natural reaction is withdrawal. What looks like rejection is often nothing more than self-protection. Think about it, if every step you take closer makes them take a step back, what's the solution? Counterintuitively, it's not more pressure, it's space. By stepping back and respecting their rhythm, you send a far more powerful message. I trust you, I respect your boundaries. I'm not here to control you, and trust is the soil where true intimacy grows. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents." Similarly, the greatest tragedy in relationships is when we suffocate love by trying to force it. Avoidant partners don't soften under force, they soften when they feel safe. Respecting boundaries is not about absence, it's about presence without intrusion. Why does this work? Psychological research in attachment theory shows that avoidant individuals rely on distancing strategies when intimacy feels overwhelming. Their brain associates closeness with risk of losing autonomy, risk of being consumed, risk of emotional suffocation. When you show them that their independence is intact, you disarm that alarm system. What seemed like a locked door starts to open, not because you forced it, but because they chose to unlock it. One study on relationship dynamics found that partners who reduced pursuing behaviors, constant texting, demanding reassurance, or pushing for deep talks, actually experienced more emotional openness over time from their avoidant counterparts. It's ironic, but true, distance creates room for closeness. How to apply it in real life? Respecting boundaries doesn't mean you step away forever, it doesn't mean coldness, it means balance. For example, when your partner says they need space, don't interpret it as rejection, see it as their way of regulating emotions. Instead of bombarding them with messages, give them breathing room. The silence may feel uncomfortable, but it's healing silence. Create rituals of trust, A simple "I'm here when you're ready" is more powerful than hours of convincing. Philosopher Rollo May wrote, "Love is the difficult realization that something other than oneself is real. Respecting boundaries is exactly that, realizing that your partner's reality, their pace, their fears, are as real as yours. And when you honor that, the relationship shifts from a battlefield to a sanctuary." The long-term shift, over time, this approach changes the emotional climate of the relationship. Instead of living in constant push and pull, you build an environment where your avoidant partner no longer sees love as a trap, they see it as choice. Boundaries stop feeling like walls, they start functioning like windows, openings through which light and trust can enter. So the next time you're tempted to chase harder, remember, respect is the bridge that pressure could never build. By showing that you're not afraid of space, you invite them to step closer, not out of fear, but out of freedom, and that kind of closeness lasts. Building emotional independence. Here's the paradox. The less you lean on them for your happiness, the safer they feel with you. When you're in a relationship with an avoidant partner, one of the quickest ways to trigger their defenses is by relying too heavily on them for emotional stability. To them, overdependence doesn't feel like love, it feels like pressure. The more your happiness seems tied exclusively to their responses, the more they retreat. It's not that they don't care, but their nervous system reads emotional weight as a burden they might not be able to carry. But here's the twist. When you begin to cultivate your own inner strength, your own joy, and your own sense of meaning outside the relationship, you rewrite the script. You're no longer seen as another demand on their limited emotional bandwidths, you're seen as someone who stands on equal footing. And equality, not neediness, is what eventually invites closeness. Think about it. Imagine a partner who radiates confidence, who knows how to nurture their own well-being, and who brings joy into the relationship rather than extracting it. Isn't that magnetic? It's the difference between being a heavy weight to carry and being a companion who walks beside them. Independence in this context isn't distance, it's strength. As philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." When you cultivate your own why, your own passions, friendships, hobbies, and goals, you stop waiting for your partner to be the sole source of your fulfillment. And paradoxically, this makes your presence more attractive. Love stops feeling like a cage they're trapped in and starts feeling like a choice they gladly make. Why does this work? Attachment research shows that avoidant individuals are hypersensitive to signs of dependency. When they sense that a partner's emotional survival hinges entirely on them, it activates fears of being consumed or overwhelmed. By contrast, when they witness self-sufficiency, their defenses lower. Instead of anticipating demands, they feel free to lean in voluntarily. One longitudinal study found that couples who practiced mutual autonomy, both partners maintaining their own support systems and identities, reported higher satisfaction than couples locked in cycles of dependence. Independence, far from weakening connection, actually strengthens it by removing the undertone of desperation. How to apply this in daily life? Nurture your own world, don't abandon your friendships, creative outlets, or career ambitions just to orbit around your partner. A fuller life makes you a fuller partner. Practice emotional regulation. Instead of needing immediate soothing every time you feel anxious, try self-soothing strategies like journaling, exercise, or meditation. Share joy, don't extract it. Bring energy into the relationship, rather than waiting for it to be handed to you. As Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose. Emotional independence is exactly that, the power to choose love rather than cling to it out of fear. The long-term shift over time, emotional independence reshapes the dynamic completely. The avoidant partner no longer experiences you as a weight pressing down on them, but as a partner standing shoulder to shoulder. The love becomes lighter, freer, and paradoxically more secure. Closeness grows not because you demanded it, but because you stopped making it a condition of your happiness. So the next time you catch yourself waiting for them to complete you, pause. Remember, strength is attractive, independence is magnetic, and love that comes from choice, not necessity, is the kind that truly lasts. Creating safety through consistency. Hook. Here's the secret. Avoidant partners don't listen to your words, they watch your patterns. In relationships with avoidant partners, one of the biggest mistakes is believing that reassurance alone is enough. You can say, "I love you 1,000 times," but if your behavior fluctuates, their defenses will rise again. For them, emotional safety doesn't come from grand gestures or endless explanations, it comes from stability, predictability, a rhythm they can trust. Think of it like this: if every time you walk on a bridge, it shakes, would you dare to cross it again? Avoidant partners see relationships the same way. If the foundation feels unstable, hot one day, cold the next, they don't step forward, they step back. But when your behavior is steady, when your reactions are not extreme, you gradually prove that the bridge can hold their weight. Philosopher Epictetus once said, "Freedom is the right use of consistency." For avoidant partners, freedom and safety are tied together. They don't want roller coasters, they want terrain they can navigate without fearing collapse. Your consistency is the unspoken promise that love won't suddenly turn into chaos. Why does this matter so much? Attachment research shows that avoidant individuals often grew up learning that closeness equals unpredictability, love one moment, rejection the next. To survive, they trained themselves to depend only on themselves. That's why words alone don't shift their defenses. But when they see consistency in your mood, your reactions, your availability, their nervous system starts to relax. They begin to internalize a new belief. Maybe this time closeness doesn't mean danger. A 2018 study on romantic attachment patterns revealed that partners who provided steady emotional responses, rather than fluctuating between over-engagement and withdrawal, reduced avoidant tendencies over time. The avoidant partner didn't just soften, they began to initiate intimacy on their own, because the environment no longer felt like a trap. What does this look like in practice? Instead of swinging between over-attention and silence, keep your engagement moderate but steady. If you set a boundary, hold it. Don't bend it out of guilt one day and enforce it harshly the next. Respond to conflict with calm, not extremes. Avoidants fear emotional storms, so your steadiness is like shelter. Remember, consistency doesn't mean perfection, it means reliability. It's not about never making mistakes, but about showing up in a way that's emotionally predictable. The long-term transformation, over time, consistency turns suspicion into trust. The partner who once avoided vulnerability begins to take small risks, sharing a thought, leaning into closeness, or reaching for your hand without fear. Why? Because the ground beneath them finally feels solid. So the next time you wonder why your words aren't enough, remind yourself, avoidants don't trust promises, they trust patterns. And when your patterns prove that love is stable, they no longer feel the need to run, they begin, slowly but surely, to stay. Practicing patience and timing. What if love wasn't about speed but about timing? One of the most underrated skills in handling a relationship with an avoidant partner is patience. We live in a culture that glorifies quick results, instant responses, fast solutions, overnight transformation. But relationships, especially with avoidant personalities, don't unfold on demand. They are more like a seed that grows in its own season. Water it too much and you drown it. Leave it dry and it withers. The art lies in waiting for the right moment. Avoidant partners are not slow because they don't care. They are slow because their internal wiring is cautious. Their nervous system tells them don't trust too quickly, don't open too fast. This isn't laziness or cruelty, it's survival. If you mistake their pacing for disinterest, you'll push harder. But that's exactly what drives them further away. Patience, on the other hand, says, "I believe in your timing. I'm here when you're ready." As Lao Tzu, the ancient philosopher, wrote, "Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished." This wisdom applies perfectly here. You cannot hurry healing, intimacy, or trust with an avoidant partner. But if you create a climate of patience, everything that needs to grow will eventually grow. Why does timing matter so much? Research in interpersonal psychology shows that avoidant partners often require longer warming up phases in conversations and deeper emotional exchanges. If pressured to open up before they're ready, their defenses spike, but when given time, they engage more authentically and with less resistance. One study highlighted that couples who allowed pause moments in conflict giving space instead of forcing instant resolution reported higher satisfaction and lower defensive behavior in avoidant individuals. How does this look in real life? Instead of demanding immediate answers in a conflict, allow pauses. Silence doesn't mean rejection, it can mean processing. Notice their rhythm. Maybe they text back later, maybe they need time before agreeing to plans. Respecting this rhythm builds trust. Avoid ultimatums like, "If you don't open up now, I'm done." Such urgency only fuels their fear. Replace it with patience. "I'll be here when you're ready to share." Patience is not passivity. It doesn't mean waiting forever while your needs are ignored. It means discerning the right timing to invite closeness without forcing it. Just like a surfer waits for the right wave, not every moment is the right one to push intimacy, but when the moment comes, your patience pays off. They lean in naturally without fear. The long-term impact: patience rewires the dynamic. It shows your avoidant partner that you are not a ticking clock waiting to explode. You become the calm in their storm. Over time, they start to associate love not with urgency or pressure, but with steady, gentle timing. And that redefinition opens the door to closeness they never thought possible. So remember, love isn't a race, it's a rhythm. And with avoidant partners, the rhythm is slower, but when you learn to dance to their timing, the connection becomes surprisingly deep, lasting, and real. Practicing non-judgmental listening. What if the most healing thing you could offer wasn't advice, but silence? When it comes to avoidant partners, words can feel like traps. The moment they sense criticism, analysis, or hidden agendas, their defenses flare. That's why one of the most underrated, yet powerful, aspects of building a secure connection is practicing non-judgmental listening. Not listening to reply, not listening to correct, but listening to simply understand. Avoidant individuals are often hyper-alert to judgment. Their emotional radar is constantly scanning for disapproval. A sigh, a raised eyebrow, a "why are you like this?" All of these, though small, can trigger shutdown, but when they experience listening that is free of judgment, they encounter something rare: safety. Safety to speak, safety to feel, safety to exist without being dissected. As the philosopher Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." For avoidant relationships, this ancient wisdom is more than a cliché, it's a survival guide. The less you rush to fix, the more space you create for genuine connection. Why does this matter? Research on attachment communication shows that avoidant partners often avoid sharing emotions because they anticipate negative evaluation. But in studies where partners responded with empathic listening instead of solutions, avoidant individuals were significantly more willing to open up later. Listening doesn't solve their fear instantly, but it slowly rewires their expectation. Maybe sharing won't hurt me after all. What does non-judgmental listening look like in practice? When they speak about something small, work stress, family tension, resist the urge to correct or analyze. Instead, reflect back. "That sounds tough. I hear you." Drop the shoulds. Phrases like, "You should just talk about it," or "You should be more open," sound innocent, but to an avoidant partner they feel like veiled criticism. Use presence, not pressure. Sometimes sitting in silence while they gather words is more supportive than filling the space with advice. Think of it like holding a container. Your role is not to pour into it, but to keep it steady so that what needs to come out comes out naturally. The long-term effect: when an avoidant partner consistently experiences non-judgmental listening, their brain begins to associate intimacy with calmness rather than critique. Over time, what was once silence becomes slow disclosure. They begin to test the waters, sharing deeper pieces of themselves, not because you demanded it, but because you earned it. Non-judgmental listening may sound passive, but it is profoundly active. It's a discipline of holding space without trying to shape it. It tells your partner, "Your voice matters here," not because it's perfect, but because it's yours. Preserving freedom while keeping the bond safe. Hook. What if I told you freedom doesn't weaken love, it makes it breathe? For avoidant partners, the biggest fear is that closeness equals captivity. In their mind, intimacy feels like a trap, where love means losing personal freedom. That's why they often withdraw the moment a relationship feels too close. But the real path to healing is to prove the opposite, to show that closeness and freedom can coexist. Think about it: if you try to hold someone in your grip all the time, that grip won't last long. But when you give them the reassurance that they can step back without losing the relationship, they start coming closer on their own. You create a paradoxical kind of safety, freedom inside commitment. This slowly rewires their defenses, teaching them that love isn't a cage, it's an expansion. As philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre once said, love is not a prison, it is the recognition of freedom. When you create a relationship dynamic where your partner chooses to stay rather than being forced, the bond no longer feels like confinement, it feels like choice. Love stops being a demand and starts becoming a space to grow. Why does this work? Research shows that avoidant individuals see intimacy as a threat because they fear losing their sense of self. But when they repeatedly experience closeness without the loss of autonomy, their nervous system learns a new story. Fear is replaced with calm. Psychologist Sue Johnson explains, the true power of love is not that it ties you down, but that it gives you more room to live. In fact, one study found that couples who allowed each other space while keeping the commitment strong reported deeper trust and less conflict. This paradox, freedom and commitment side by side, is exactly what helps avoidant partners feel safe enough to open up. How does this look in real life? Remind your partner that they are free to make their own choices, but that your bond remains intact. Sometimes let the initiative be in their hands. When they choose the timing of connection or activities, it strengthens their sense of agency. Shift the way you offer reassurance. Instead of constant demands for closeness, give subtle signals of security. Calm consistency is far more powerful than pressure. The long-term shift, over time, this approach reshapes the emotional climate. Where closeness once felt like suffocation, it now feels like expansion. Love is no longer a trap, but a sanctuary. Freedom and intimacy stop competing and start complementing each other. So the next time you catch yourself thinking that love means control, pause. Remember, real love never builds cages, it gives wings. And when you give your partner those wings, they don't fly away forever. They return again and again, not out of fear or obligation, but out of choice. And that kind of return is the most powerful closeness of all.